Okay, I think I'm on live now. Gonna close that. Ah, is my phone charging or not? Okay, let's see if I am on live. Oh, by the way, yeah, I hit 500 subscribers. I think after this live stream, I'm gonna make a special live stream if I have time because tomorrow I work like very early, so I don't know if I'm gonna have the time to make another live stream. This one is gonna last for like 2 hours. So yeah, I was gonna. I don't think I'm gonna post everywhere. I'm just waiting so that I'm gonna get Tanker Junior. Tanker Junior. It's so hot. I don't have my air conditioning behind me. I think I'm gonna remove my t-shirt. It's so hot. I was just playing before and I'm sweating. Like I took a shower yesterday, but it's not even enough. Like every day you have to take a shower. Like I usually take shower like after 2 days, but sometimes I take shower every day, but sometimes 2 days. But I'm not like someone who doesn't take a shower. It's not about that. It's when you do nothing, you don't smell. When you like move or do something, you sweat, you smell. That's when you have to take a shower. Okay, whatever. Talking about shower. Point of this live stream is rating Wirecut. So yeah. Um. Okay, thank you, Generis, on the live stream. So we're gonna start now. We were here. Yeah. And yeah, they got Yellowfang and as a prisoner, and Firepaw got he got punished, but no, I think he's released. So like he's gonna train now. That's what I understand. I don't know. When I talk, it's not the same. When I type, I know I type better, but when I talk, it's like I'm overthinking and I don't know what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm not very comfortable. I'm not like I'm a bit stressed when it's to talk too much. I don't know. I overthink and then my brain becomes like, okay, never mind. But yeah, okay, we're gonna start now. Okay, we are halfway today, 2 days before we end the first book. Oh my god. Oh. Okay, I'm gonna start in 3, 2. Oh my god, there are 4 people watching. Yeah, I'm laying here because and I'm closing my eyes because that's how I get. That's how I. How do I say that? I get on the story. I get it. I get on the story like that. There's like no, because when I close my eyes, I think of the place and the shape, and that's why I'm laying on the bed. So yeah. All right. 3, 2, 1.
You are a Shadow Clan apprentice, aren't you? How many moons are you? The tabby stared awkwardly down at the ground. 6 moons, he stammered, not meeting Lionheart's eye. Rather small for 6 moons, Lionheart murmured. His tone was gentle, but his gaze was searching and serious. My mother was small too, answered the tabby nervously. He bowed his head and backed away, disappearing into the crowd of cats with a twitch of his light brown tail. Lionheart turned to Firepaw and Greypaw. Well, he might be small, but at least he was curious. If only you two showed as much interest in the stories your elders tell. Sorry, Lionheart, Firepaw and Greypaw mewed, exchanging doubtful glances. Lionheart grunted good-naturedly. Oh, go away, the pair of you. Next time, I hope Blue Star decides to bring apprentices who appreciate what they hear. And with a half-hearted growl, he chased them away from the group.
Come on,
purred Greypaw as they leaped away.
Let's see where Ravenpaw's gotten to.
Ravenpaw was in the middle of a group of apprentices who were clamoring for him to tell them about the battle with RiverClan.
Go on, Ravenpaw. Tell us what happened,
called a pretty black and white she-cat. Ravenpaw shyly shuffled his paws and shook his head.
Come on, Ravenpaw,
insisted another. Ravenpaw looked around and saw Firepaw and Greypaw at the edge of the crowd. Firepaw nodded encouragingly. Ravenpaw flicked his tail in acknowledgement and began his story. He stumbled a bit at first, but as he continued, the tremor disappeared from his voice and his audience leaned in, their eyes growing wider.
Fur was flying everywhere. Blood spattered the leaves of the bramble bushes, bright red against green. I'd just fought off a huge warrior and sent him squealing into the bushes when the ground shook, and I heard a warrior scream. It was Oakheart. Redtail raced past me, his mouth dripping blood and his fur torn. Oakheart is dead, he howled. Then he rushed off to help Tigerclaw as he fought another warrior.
Who would have thought Ravenpaw was such a good storyteller? Greypaw murmured to Firepaw, sounding impressed. But Firepaw was thinking of something else. What was it Ravenpaw had said? That Redtail had killed Oakheart? But, according to Tigerclaw, Oakheart had killed Redtail, and he, Tigerclaw, had killed Oakheart in revenge.
If Redtail killed Oakheart, who killed Redtail?
Firepaw hissed to Greypaw. If who did what? Greypaw echoed absent-mindedly. He was only half listening to Firepaw. Firepaw shook his head to clear it.
Ravenpaw must have been mistaken, he thought. He must have meant Tigerclaw.
Ravenpaw was coming to the end of his story.
Finally, Redtail dragged the Wailing Cat off Tigerclaw by his tail and, with the strength of the whole of TigerClan, flung him into the bushes.
Tigerclaw is very sus. I think he probably killed. I don't know. Probably. I don't like him. I don't know. He probably is. Okay, I'm gonna keep going.
A moving shadow caught Firepaw's eye. He glanced around and saw Tigerclaw standing a short distance away. The warrior was watching Ravenpaw with an iron stare. Unaware of his mentor's presence, Ravenpaw continued to answer question after question from his enthusiastic audience.
What were Oakheart's dying words? Is it true that Oakheart had never lost a battle before?
Ravenpaw replied promptly, with his voice high and clear and his eyes shining. But when Firepaw glanced back at Tigerclaw, he saw a look of horror and then fury creep over the warrior's face. Clearly Tigerclaw wasn't enjoying Ravenpaw's story at all. Firepaw was just about to say something to Greypaw when a loud yowl signaled to all the cats for quiet. Firepaw couldn't help feeling relieved as Ravenpaw fell silent at last, and Tigerclaw turned away. Firepaw looked up to see where the yowl had come from. 3 cats sat silhouetted against the moonlit sky on top of the great rock. They were Blue Star, Broken Star, and Crooked Star. The clan leaders were about to begin the meeting. But where was the Wind Clan leader?
Surely they won't start the meeting without Tallstar,
Firepaw hissed under his breath.
I don't know,
Greypaw muttered back.
Haven't you noticed? There isn't a single Wind Clan cat here,
whispered a River Clan apprentice on the other side of Firepaw. Firepaw guessed that similar conversations were going on all around him. As the other cats were gathering beneath the great rock, an unsettled murmuring rumbled in their throats.
We can't start yet, yowled one voice above the noise. Where are the Wind Clan representatives? We must wait until all the clans are present.
On top of the rock, Blue Star stepped forward. Her gray fur glowed almost white in the moonlight.
Cats of all clans, welcome,
she meowed in a clear voice.
It is true that Wind Clan is not present. but Broken Star wishes to speak anyway. Broken Star padded noiselessly up to stand beside Blue Star. He surveyed the crowd for a few moments, his orange eyes burning. Then he took a deep breath and began.
Friends, I come to speak to you tonight about the needs of Shadow Clan.
But he was interrupted by raised, impatient voices from below.
"Where is Tall Star?"
cried one.
"Where are the Wind Clan warriors?"
yowled another. Broken Star stretched up to his full height and lashed his tail from side to side.
As the leader of Shadow Clan, it is my right to address you here,
he growled in a voice full of menace. The crowd fell into an uneasy silence. All around him, Firepaw could smell the acrid tang of fear. Broken Star yowled again.
We all know that the hard time of Leaf Bear and Late New Leaf have left us with little prey in our hunting grounds. But we also know that Wind Clan, River Clan, and Thunder Clan lost many kits in the freezing weather that came so late this season. Shadow Clan did not lose kits. We are hardened to the cold north wind. Our kits are stronger than yours from the moment they are born, and so we find ourselves with many mouths to feed and too little prey to feed them.
The crowd, still silent, listened anxiously.
The needs of Shadow Clan are simple. In order to survive, we must increase our hunting territory. That is why I insist that you allow Shadow Clan warriors to hunt in your territories.
A shocked but muted growl rippled through the crowd.
Share our hunting grounds,
called the outraged voice of Tiger Claw.
"It is unprecedented,"
cried a tortoiseshell queen from River Clan.
"The clans have never shared hunting rights."
Should Shadow Clan be punished because our kits thrive?
Yelled Broken Star from the Great Rock.
Do you want us to watch our young starve? You must share what you have with us. Must,
spat Small Ear furiously from the back of the crowd.
Must, repeated Broken Star. Wind Clan failed to understand this. In the end, we were forced to drive them out of their territory.
Snarls of outrage burst from the crowd, but Broken Star's caterwaul rang loud above them.
And if we have to, we will drive you all from your hunting grounds in order to feed our hungry kits.
There was instant silence. On the other side of the clearing, Firepaw heard a River Clan apprentice start to mutter something, but he was quickly hushed by an elder. Satisfied that he had every cat's attention, Broken Star continued.
Each year, the two legs spoil more of our territory. At least one clan must remain strong if all the clans are to survive. Shadow Clan thrives while you all struggle, and there may come a time when you will need us to protect you.
You doubt our strength?
Hissed Tiger Claw. His pale eyes glared threateningly at the Shadow Clan leader, and his powerful shoulders rippled with tension.
I do not ask for your answer now.
Broken Star ignored the warrior's challenge.
You must each go away and consider my words. But bear this in mind. Would you prefer to share your prey, or be driven out and left homeless and starving?
Warriors, elders, and apprentices looked at one another in disbelief. In the anxious pause that followed, Crooked Star stepped forward.
"I have already agreed to allow Shadow Clan some hunting rights in the river that runs through our territory,"
he meowed quietly, gazing down on his clan.
Horror and humiliation rippled through the River Clan cats at their leader's words.
"We were not consulted,"
cried a grizzled silver tabby.
"I feel that this is best for our clan, for all the clans,"
Crooked Star explained, his voice heavy with resignation.
"There are plenty of fish in the river. It is better to share our prey than to spill blood fighting over it."
"And what of ThunderClan?" Small-Ear croaked. "Blue Star, have you too agreed to this outrageous demand?"
Blue Star unwaveringly met the old cat's gaze. "I have made no agreement with Broken Star except that I shall discuss his proposal with my clan after the gathering." "Well, at least that's something," muttered Grey Paw in Firepaw's ear. "We'll show them we're not as soft as that yellow-bellied River Clan." Broken Star spoke up again, his rasping voice sounding arrogant and strong after Crooked Star's surrender.
"I also bring news that is important to the safety of your kits. A Shadow Clan cat has turned rogue and spurned the warrior code. We chased her out of our camp, but we do not know where she is now. She looks like a mangy old creature, but she has a bite like Tiger Clan."
Firepaw's fur bristled. Could Broken Star possibly be talking about Yellowfang? He pricked up his ears, curious to hear more.
"She is dangerous. I warn you. Do not offer shelter to her. And—"
Broken Star paused dramatically.
"Until she is caught and killed, I urge you to keep a close eye on your kits."
Firepaw knew from the nervous growl that rumbled in the throats of the ThunderClan cats that they, too, had thought of Yellowfang. The bold she-cat had done nothing to endear herself to her reluctant hosts, and Firepaw guessed it wouldn't take much to drum up hatred against her. Even the words of a despised enemy like Broken Star would be enough. The Shadow Clan warriors began to push their way out of the throng of cats. Broken Star leaped down from the rock, and his warriors immediately surrounded him and escorted him away from Four Trees, back into Shadow Clan territory. The remaining Shadow Clan cats followed quickly behind, including the undersized tabby Lionheart had questioned earlier. But among the other Shadow Clan apprentices, the tabby no longer looked unusually small. They all looked tiny and undernourished, more like kits of 3 or 4 moons than full-fledged apprentices. "What do you think of all that?" Grey Paw mewed in a low voice. Ravenpaw bounded over before Firepaw could reply. "What's going to happen now?" he wailed, his fur fluffed up in alarm and his eyes wider than ever. Firepaw didn't answer. The elders of ThunderClan were gathering nearby, and he was straining to hear what they were saying.
"That must be Yellowfang he was talking about," growled Small-Ear.
"Well, she did snap at Goldenflower's youngest kit the other day," murmured Speckletail darkly. She was the oldest nursery queen, and fiercely protective of all the kits.
"And we've left her behind, with the camp virtually unguarded,"
wailed One-Eye, who for once seemed to be having no trouble hearing everything.
"I tried to tell you she was a danger to us," hissed Darkstripe. "Blue Star has to listen to reason now and get rid of her before she harms any of our young."
Tiger Claw strode up to the group.
"We must return to camp at once and deal with this rogue,"
he yowled. Firepaw didn't stop to hear more. His mind was spinning. Loyal as he was to his clan, he just couldn't believe that Yellowfang would be a danger to kits. Frightened for the old she-cat, burning with questions only she could answer, he raced away from Greypaw and Ravenpaw without a word. He charged up the hillside and pelted through the forest. Had he been mistaken about Yellowfang? If he warned her about the danger she was in, would he be risking his own position in ThunderClan? Whatever trouble he got himself into, He had to find out the truth from her before the other cats got back to the camp. Chapter 13. Firepaw reached the edge of the ravine and looked down at the camp. He was panting and his paws were slippery with dew. He sniffed the air. He was alone. There was still time to speak to Yellowfang before the others returned from the gathering. Silently, he jumped down the rocky slope and slipped through the gorse tunnel unnoticed. The camp was still and quiet, apart from the muted snuffles of sleeping cats. Firepaw quickly crept around the edge of the clearing to Yellowfang's nest. The old medicine cat was curled on top of her mossy bedding.
Yellowfang,
he hissed urgently.
Yellowfang, wake up! It's important.
Two orange eyes opened and glinted in the moonlight.
I wasn't sleeping,
meowed Yellowfang quietly. She sounded calm and alert.
You came straight from the gathering to me?
That must mean you've heard. She blinked slowly and looked away.
So Broken Star has kept his promise. What promise?
Firepaw felt very confused. Yellowfang seemed to know more than he did about what was going on.
Shadow Clan's noble leader promised to drive me from every clan territory,
Yellowfang replied dryly.
What did he say about me? He warned us that our kits were in danger as long as we sheltered the Shadow Clan rogue. He didn't say your name, but ThunderClan guessed who he was talking about. You must leave before the others get back. You are in danger.
You mean they believed Broken Star? Yellowfang flattened her ears and swished her tail angrily.
Yes,
Firepaw meowed urgently.
Darkstripe says you're dangerous. The other cats are scared of what you might do. Tigerclaw is planning to come back, and I don't know. I think you should go before they get here.
In the distance, Firepaw could hear the yowls of angry cats. Yellowfang struggled stiffly to her paws. Firepaw gave her a nudge to help her up, his mind still spinning with questions.
What did Broken Star mean when he warned us to keep a close eye on our kits?
He couldn't stop himself from asking.
Would you really do something like that?
Would I what?
Would you harm our kits?
Yellowfang flared her nostrils and looked steadily at him.
Do you think so?
Firepaw met her gaze without flinching.
No, I don't believe you would ever harm a kit. But why would Broken Star say such a thing?
The noise of the cats was coming nearer, and with it, the sense of aggression and anger. Yellowfang looked wildly from side to side.
Go,
Firepaw urged. Her safety was more important than his curiosity. But Yellowfang remained where she was and stared at him. A calm look suddenly came into her wild eyes.
Firepaw, you believe I'm innocent, and I'm grateful for that. If you believe me, then others might, and I know Blue Star will give me a fair hearing. I can't run forever. I'm too old. I shall stay here and face whatever your clan decides for me.
She sighed and sank down onto her bony haunches.
But what about Tigerclaw? What if he...
He is headstrong, and he knows the power.
Velvet, I'm I'm listening to the story, so this is why I'm laying on the bed, so I can get like focused on the story. Wake up. No, I'm not sleeping. I'm listening to the story. Yeah. Keep going.
Or he has over the other clan cats. They are in awe of him, but even he will obey Blue Star. Rustling in the undergrowth beyond the camp boundary told Firepaw that the cats were almost at the entrance.
Go away, Firepaw,
hissed Yellowfang, baring her blackened teeth at him.
Don't make trouble for yourself by being seen with me now. There is nothing you can do for me. Have faith in your leader, and let her decide what happens to me."
Firepaw realized Yellowfang had made up her mind. He touched his nose to her patchy fur, then crept silently away into the shadows to watch. Through the gorse came the cats, Bluestar first, accompanied by Lionheart. Frostfur and Willowpelt were right behind them. Frostfur raced away from the troop immediately and ran toward the nursery, the fur on her tail bristling in alarm. Tigerclaw and Darkstripe strode into the clearing, shoulder to shoulder, looking grim. The others followed behind, with Ravenpaw and Greypaw at the rear. As soon as he saw his friends, Firepaw trotted out to join them.
"You went to warn Yellowfang, didn't you?"
whispered Greypaw when Firepaw reached his side.
"Yes, I did,"
Firepaw admitted.
"but she won't leave. She trusts Bluestar to treat her fairly. Did anyone miss me?"
"Only us," replied Ravenpaw. Around the camp, the cats who had stayed behind began to wake up. They must have scented the aggression and heard the tension in the voices of the returning cats, for they all came running into the clearing, their tails held high.
"What has happened?"
called a tabby warrior named Running Wind.
"Broken Star has demanded hunting rights for Shadow Clan in our territory,"
replied Longtail loudly enough for all the cats to hear.
"And he warned us about a rogue cat who will harm our kits," added Willowpelt. "It must be Yellowfang."
Meows of anger and distress rose from the crowd.
"Silence!"
ordered Bluestar, leaping onto the high rock. Instinctively, the cat settled in front of her. A loud screech made every cat turn its head toward the fallen tree where the elders slept. Tigerclaw and Darkstripe were dragging Yellowfang roughly from her nest. She shrieked furiously as they hauled her into the clearing and dumped her in front of the high rock. Firepaw felt every muscle in his body tense. Without thinking, he dropped into a low crouch, ready to spring at Yellowfang's persecutors.
"Wait, Firepaw," growled Greypaw in his ear. "Let Bluestar deal with this."
"What is going on?" demanded Bluestar, jumping down from the high rock and glaring at her warriors.
"I gave no order to attack our prisoner."
Tigerclaw and Darkstripe instantly let go of Yellowfang, who crouched in the dust, hissing and spitting. Frostfur appeared from the nursery and pushed her way through to the front of the clan.
"We got back in time,"
she meowed with a gasp.
"The kits are safe."
"Of course they are," snapped Bluestar. Frostfur seemed taken aback.
"But you are going to throw Yellowfang out, aren't you?"
she meowed, her blue eyes wide.
"Throw her out?"
spat Darkstripe, unleashing his claws.
"We should kill her now."
Bluestar fixed her piercing blue eyes on Darkstripe's angry face. "And what has she done?" she asked with icy calm. Firepaw held his breath.
"You were at the gathering? Broken Star said she—"
Darkstripe began. "Broken Star said only that there is a rogue somewhere in the woods," meowed Bluestar, her voice menacingly quiet. "He did not mention Yellowfang by name. The kits are safe. For as long as she is in my clan, Yellowfang will not be harmed in any way." Bluestar's words were met with silence, and Firepaw heaved a sigh of relief.
W.
Yellowfang looked up at Bluestar and narrowed her eyes respectfully.
"I will leave now, if you wish it, Bluestar."
"There is no need," Bluestar replied. "You have done nothing wrong. You will be safe here." The ThunderClan leader lifted her gaze to the crowd of cats that surrounded Yellowfang and meowed.
"It is time we discussed the real threat to our clan.
Broken Star.
We have already begun to prepare for an attack by Shadow Clan,"
Bluestar began.
"We'll carry on with those preparations and patrol our borders more frequently. Wind Clan has gone. River Clan has given hunting rights to Shadow Clan warriors. Thunder Clan stands alone against Broken Star."
A murmur of defiance rippled through the cats, and Firepaw felt his fur prickle with anticipation.
Then we're not going to agree to Broken Star's demands?
Meowed Tiger Claw.
Clans have never shared hunting rights before,
Blue Star answered.
They have always managed to support themselves in their own territories. There is no reason why this should change.
Tiger Claw nodded approvingly.
But can we defend ourselves against a Shadow Clan attack? Asked Small Ear's tremulous voice. Wind Clan didn't manage it. River Clan won't even try.
Blue Star met his old eyes with her steady gaze.
We must try. We will not give up our territory without a fight.
All around the clearing, Firepaw saw the cats nodding in agreement.
I shall travel to the Moonstone tomorrow,
Blue Star announced.
The warriors of StarClan will give me the strength I need to lead ThunderClan through this dark time. You must all get some rest. We have a lot to do when daylight comes. I wish to talk with Lionheart now.
Without another word, she turned and strode toward her den. Firepaw noticed the look of wonder that had entered the eyes of some of the cats when Blue Star had mentioned the Moonstone. Now the clan cats hurriedly gathered in groups, meowing in hushed voices full of excitement.
What's the Moonstone?
Firepaw asked Graypaw.
It's a rock deep underground that shines in the dark,
whispered Graypaw. His voice was hoarse with awe.
All clan leaders have to spend one night at the Moonstone when they are first chosen. There, the spirits of StarClan share with them. Share what with them?
Graypaw frowned.
I don't know, he admitted. I know only that the new leaders have to sleep near the stone, and as they sleep, they have special dreams. After that, they have the gift of 9 lives, and take the name Star.
Firepaw watched Yellowfang limp back to her shadowy nest. It looked like Tiger Claw's rough treatment had aggravated her old injury. As he trotted back to the apprentice's den, Firepaw decided to ask Spotted Leaf for more poppy seeds in the morning.
So, what happened?
Mewed Dustpaw eagerly, popping his head out of the den. He seemed to have forgotten how much he resented the new apprentice in his eagerness to hear about the gathering.
It's like Longtail said. Broken Star demanded hunting rights,
Graypaw began. Sandpaw and Dustpaw sat and listened, but Firepaw was watching the camp. He could see the silhouettes of Blue Star and Lionheart sitting close together outside her den, talking urgently. Then he noticed the small shape of Ravenpaw at the entrance to the warrior's den. Tiger Claw stood beside him. Firepaw saw Ravenpaw's ears flatten as the young cat flinched away from Tiger Claw's fierce words. The dark warrior loomed over him, twice his size, his eyes and teeth flashing in the moonlight. What was he saying to Ravenpaw? Firepaw was just about to creep nearer and listen when Ravenpaw backed away, turned, and ran across the clearing. Firepaw greeted Ravenpaw as he reached the apprentice's den, but Ravenpaw hardly seemed to notice him. Instead, he pushed his way inside the den without a word. Firepaw got up to follow him when he saw Lionheart approaching.
Well,
Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Mhm.
Meowed the ThunderClan deputy, striding up to the
Kill
apprentices.
himself.
It seems that Firepaw, Graypaw, and Ravenpaw are about to reach another important stage in their training.
What's that?
Mewed Graypaw, looking excited. Blue Star wishes you 3 to accompany her on her journey to the Moonstone. Lionheart didn't miss the look of disappointment on the faces of Dustpaw and Sandpaw, because he added, "Don't worry, you two. You'll make the journey soon enough. For now, ThunderClan needs your strength and skill at the camp. I will remain here also." Firepaw looked past Lionheart to his leader. She was moving from one group of warriors to another, meowing instructions to each. Why had she chosen him for this journey, he wondered. "She wants you to rest now," Lionheart continued. "But first, go to Spotted Leaf and collect the herbs you will need on this expedition. It's a long way. You will need something to give you strength and quell your appetite. There will be little time for catching prey." Graypaw nodded, and Firepaw dragged his gaze away from Bluestar and nodded too. "Where is Ravenpaw?" asked Lionheart.
"He's in his nest already,"
replied Firepaw. "Good. Leave him to sleep. You can fetch herbs for him," meowed Lionheart. "Rest well. You leave at dawn." He flicked his tail and walked back to Bluestar's den.
"Well then,"
mewed Sandpaw.
"you'd better go and see Spotted Leaf."
Firepaw listened for sourness in her voice, but there was none. There was no time for jealousy now. All the cats in the clan seemed to be united against the threat from ShadowClan. Firepaw and Graypaw walked quickly toward Spotted Leaf's den. The fern tunnel was dark. Not even the full moon penetrated its thick covering. Spotted Leaf seemed to be expecting them as they emerged into her moonlit clearing.
"You have come for some traveling herbs,"
she meowed.
"Yes, please,"
Firepaw answered.
"And I think Yellowfang needs more poppy seeds. She seemed to be feeling her wounds." "I will take her some after you have gone. And your traveling herbs are ready."
Spotted Leaf indicated a pile of carefully made leaf wraps.
"Enough for the 3 of you. The dark green herb will stop your hunger pangs during the journey. The other will give you strength. Eat them both just before you leave. They're not as good as fresh prey, but the taste won't last long."
"Thanks, Spotted Leaf," mewed Firepaw. He leaned down and picked up one of the parcels. As he bent his head, Spotted Leaf stretched over and gently rubbed his cheek with her nose. Firepaw breathed in her sweet warm scent and purred his thanks. Graypaw picked up the other 2, and the friends turned and headed back through the tunnel.
"Good luck,"
Spotted Leaf called after them.
"Travel safely."
They arrived at the entrance to their den and dropped the bundles.
"Well, I just hope these herbs don't taste too revolting,"
muttered Graypaw.
"It must be a long way to the Moonstone. We've never been given herbs before. Do you know where it is?"
Firepaw asked.
"Beyond clan territory, at a place called Highstones. It lies deep underground in a cave we call Mothermouth." "Have you ever been there before?"
Firepaw was impressed that Graypaw knew so much about this mysterious place.
"No, but all apprentices have to make the journey there before they become warriors."
The thought of becoming a warrior made Firepaw's eyes gleam with excitement, and he couldn't help standing a little taller.
"Don't get your hopes up. We still have to finish our training,"
Graypaw warned, as if reading his thoughts. Firepaw looked up through the canopy of leaves at the stars glistening in the black sky above. Moon-high had passed.
"We should get some sleep,"
he mewed. But he couldn't imagine being able to sleep with the thought of tomorrow's adventure spinning through his mind. Attending the gathering, a journey to the Moonstone. How far away his kitty pet life seemed now. Chapter 14. The cold air chilled Firepaw's bones as blackness wrapped itself around him. He could hear nothing, and his nostrils were filled with the musty scent of damp earth. Out of nowhere, a brilliant ball of light flared in front of him. Firepaw ducked his head, screwing up his eyes against the glare. The light shone, dazzling coldly like a star. Then it blinked out, disappearing as quickly as it had come. The darkness fell away, and Firepaw found himself in the forest. He felt comforted by the familiar smells of the woods. He breathed in the moist green scents, and calmness flowed through his body. Without warning, a dreadful noise burst from the trees. Firepaw's fur bristled. It was the screeching of terrified cats racing out from the bushes up ahead. Firepaw recognized their ThunderClan pelts as they fled past him. He stood rooted to the spot, unable to move. Then came great cats, huge dark warriors, their eyes glittering cruelly. They thundered toward him, pounding the earth with massive paws, their claws unsheathed. And out of the shadows, Firepaw heard a high, desperate cry filled with grief and rage. Greypaw. Firepaw woke, horrified. His dream vanished, leaving his ears ringing and his fur standing on end. As he opened his eyes, he saw the face of Tigerclaw peering into the den. Firepaw leaped to his feet, instantly alert.
Something wrong, Firepaw?
Asked Tigerclaw. Just a dream, Firepaw mumbled. Tigerclaw gave him a curious look, then growled.
Wake the others. We leave shortly.
Outside the den, the sky glowed with a new dawn, and dew sparkled on the ferns. It would be a warm day once the sun was up, but the early morning dampness reminded Firepaw that the time of leaf fall was not far off. Firepaw, Greypaw, and Ravenpaw quickly gulped down the herbs that Spotted-Leaf had given them. Tigerclaw and Bluestar sat watching them, ready to leave. The rest of the camp was still asleep.
Ugh, complained Greypaw. I knew they'd be bitter. Why couldn't we eat a fat, juicy mouth instead?
These herbs will keep your hunger at bay longer, answered Bluestar, and they will make you strong. We have a long journey ahead of us.
Have you eaten yours already?
Firepaw asked.
I cannot eat if I'm going to share dreams with StarClan at the Moonstone tonight,
replied Bluestar. Firepaw felt his paws tingle when he heard these words. He was itching to begin the journey. With the dawn's light and the familiar voices, the terror of his dream had left him. All that remained was the memory of the brilliant light, and Bluestar's words sent a renewed thrill of excitement through him.
The 5 cats made their way through the gorse tunnel and out of the camp.
Lionheart was just returning with a patrol.
Safe journey,
he meowed. Bluestar nodded.
I know I can trust you to keep the camp safe,
she answered. Lionheart looked at Greypaw and dipped his...
You can't, you're welcome. Oh my god. Ah. I'm listening to Wild Cat. We are like at the half of the story right now. It's like 8 hours almost, 7 hours. I don't know if you watched the whole or no. I've totally I don't know if you watched like the beginning of the story because we're like almost at the end. Like, yeah, I mean half of the end. Still have a lot, like 3 hours or 4 hours left. And yeah, I'm laying on my bed. That's the way. Yeah, you made it. Do you understand the beginning of the story? All good. All right. Almost fall asleep. Not gonna lie. That's my way of listening to story. But at some point, I was like almost sleeping. And right now, like they are going to the high stone, so Blue Star can get like 9 lives. 9 lives. Yeah, I'm gonna keep going. No, I'm gonna lie. 3, 2, 1.
his head. Remember, he meowed. You are almost a warrior. Don't forget what I have taught you. Greypaw looked back at Lionheart with affection.
I will always remember, Lionheart,
he mewed. nudging his head against the tabby's broad golden flank. They retraced their route to Four Trees. This was the quickest way to pass into WindClan territory. High stones lay beyond. As Firepaw bounded down the side of the glade toward the great rock, he could still smell the scents of last night's gathering. He followed the others through the grassy clearing and up the slope on the other side, into WindClan territory. The bushy slope became steeper as they climbed, and rockier, until the cats had to leap from boulder to boulder up the side of a craggy cliff face. Firepaw paused when they reached the top. Ahead of them, the ground flattened out into a wide plateau. The wind blew in a steady gust that rippled the grass and bent the trees. The soil was stony, and outcroppings of bare rock dotted the landscape here and there. The air still carried the scents of WindClan, but they were stale. Much fresher and more alarming were the pungent markings of ShadowClan warriors. All clans are entitled to safe passage to the Moonstone, but ShadowClan seems to have no respect for the warrior code anymore. So be alert, warned Bluestar. We mustn't hunt outside our territory, though. We'll follow the warrior code, even if ShadowClan doesn't. They set off across the plateau as the sun rose into the sky, following the tracks through the heather. Firepaw had grown used to living under a canopy of trees. Without their shade, his flame-colored pelt felt heavy and hot, and his back seemed to burn. He was thankful for the steady breeze blowing from the forests behind. Suddenly Tigerclaw stopped dead.
"Watch out!"
he hissed.
"I smell a ShadowClan patrol."
Firepaw and the others lifted their noses, and sure enough, the scent of ShadowClan warriors traveled on the wind. They are upwind. They won't know we are here if we keep moving, meowed Bluestar. But we must hurry. If they move ahead, they'll detect us. It's not far to the edge of WindClan territory now. They moved on quickly, leaping over the rocks, pushing their way through the sweet-smelling heather. Every few steps Firepaw sniffed the air and glanced over his shoulder, on the lookout for the ShadowClan patrol. But gradually the odor grew fainter and fainter. They must have turned back, he thought with relief. Finally, they reached the edge of the uplands. The landscape changed dramatically, shaped and altered beyond recognition by two legs. Wide earth tracks crisscrossed green and golden meadows. Small woods dotted the land, and two-leg nests were scattered here and there among the fields. In the distance, Firepaw saw a familiar wide gray path, and an acid tang that stung his throat drifted on the breeze. "Is that the Thunder Path?" he asked Graypaw. "Yes," replied Graypaw. "It runs up from ShadowClan territory. Can you see high stones behind it?" Firepaw looked at the distant horizon. The land rose sharply up to a point, jagged and barren. "Do we have to cross the Thunder Path, then?" "Yup," mewed Graypaw. His voice was strong and confident, almost cheerful as he faced the difficult journey. "Come on," Bluestar meowed. She bounded forward. "We can be there by moonrise as long as we keep up the pace." Firepaw followed her with the others, down the hill, away from the bleak hunting grounds of WindClan, and into the lush two-leg territory. Keeping near the hedges, the cats walked on. Once or twice Firepaw could smell prey scent from the bushes, but Spotted Leaf's herbs had succeeded in taking the edge off his hunger. The sun was still hot on his back, even in the shadows of the hedgerows. They skirted a two-leg nest. It stood on a wide expanse of hard white stone, with smaller nests around the edges. Keeping low, the cats crept past the fence that surrounded the white stone. A sudden barrage of barking and snarling made them spin around. "Dogs!" Firepaw's heart missed a beat. He arched his back, fur bristling from nose to tail. Tigerclaw peered through the fence.
"It's all right. They're tied up,"
he hissed. Firepaw looked at the two dogs scrabbling on the stone, barely 10 tail lengths away. They were nothing like the pampered pets that lived in the gardens of the two-leg place. These creatures stared at him with wild, killing eyes. They strained at their ties and reared up on their hind legs. They growled and barked, their lips drawn back to reveal huge teeth, until the shout of an unseen two-leg silenced them. The cats moved on. The sun was beginning to sink by the time they reached the Thunder Path. Blue Star signaled to them to stop and wait beneath a hedge. His eyes and throat stinging from the fumes, Firepaw watched as the great monsters flashed to and fro in front of him.
"We'll go one at a time," meowed Tiger Claw. "Ravenpaw, you first."
"No, Tiger Claw," Blue Star interrupted. "I will go first. Don't forget, this will be the first time of crossing for the apprentices. Let them see how it is done."
Firepaw stared at his leader as she padded to the edge of the Thunder Path and looked up and down. She waited calmly as one monster after another flew past her, ruffling her fur. Then, when the ear-splitting roar paused for a moment, she raced across to the other side.
"Off you go, Ravenpaw. Now you've seen how it's done," meowed Tiger Claw.
Firepaw saw Ravenpaw's eyes widen with fear. He knew just how his friend felt. He could smell his own fear scent. The small black cat crept forward to the edge of the road. It was quiet, but Ravenpaw hesitated.
"Go!"
hissed Tiger Claw from the hedge. Firepaw saw Ravenpaw's muscles tighten as he prepared to run. Then the ground began to tremble beneath his paws. A monster sped out of the distance and hurtled past. The black cat shrank back for a moment, then pelted over to join Blue Star. A monster coming in the other direction threw dust up where his paws had been just a heartbeat before. Firepaw felt his fur shiver, and he took a deep breath to calm himself. Graypaw was lucky. A long lull let him cross safely. Then it was Firepaw's turn.
"Go on, then," growled
Tiger Claw. Firepaw looked from Tiger Claw to the Thunder Path, and then walked out from beneath the hedge. He waited at the edge, as Blue Star had done. A monster was rushing toward him. Firepaw looked at the approaching monster. After this one, he thought, and waited for it to pass. Suddenly his heart lurched as he realized the monster had veered off the Thunder Path and was bumping along the grass. It was heading straight for him. A two-leg was jeering from an opening in its side. Firepaw leaped backward, claws out, battered by the storm of wind from the two-leg monster as it roared past him only a whisker away. He crouched, trembling in the dirt, and stared as it swerved back onto the path and disappeared into the distance. Through the roaring of blood in his ears, Firepaw realized the Thunder Path was quiet again, and he raced across, running faster than he had ever done in his life. "I thought you were Freshkill," cried Graypaw as Firepaw cannoned into him, almost knocking him over. "Me too," Firepaw gasped. He was trying to stop shaking. He turned back to watch Tiger Claw dart over the path toward them.
"Two legs!"
he spat as he arrived at their side. "Do you want to rest before we go on?" Blue Star asked Firepaw. Firepaw looked up. The sun was low in the sky. "No," he answered. "I'm okay." But he had leaped so frantically out of the monster's way that his claws felt frayed and tender. The cats carried on, with Blue Star in the lead. The earth was darker on this side of the Thunder Path, and the grass felt coarser under paw. As they approached the foot of high stones, the grass gave way to bare, rocky soil, dotted with patches of heather. The land sloped up now toward the sky. Craggy rocks topped the slope, blazing orange in the sun. Blue Star stopped once more. She chose a sun-warmed rock to sit upon, flat and wide enough for all 5 cats to rest side by side. "Look," she meowed, tilting her nose toward the dark slope before them. "Mothermouth." Firepaw peered upward. The glare of the setting sun blinded him, and the slope was engulfed in shadow. The cats waited in silence. Gradually, as the sun dropped down behind high stones, Firepaw began to make out the cave entrance. A square black hole that yawned darkly beneath the stone archway.
"We'll wait here until the moon is higher," meowed Blue Star. "You should hunt if you are hungry, and then get some rest."
Firepaw was pleased to have a chance to find food. He was starving now. Greypaw clearly felt the same and leaped away into a clump of heather, following the prey scent that was thick in the air. Firepaw and Ravenpaw followed him. Tigerclaw set off in the opposite direction, but Blue Star remained where she was. She sat still and silent, gazing unblinkingly at Mothermouth. The three apprentices gathered plenty of fresh kill. With Tigerclaw, they crouched on the stony hillside and feasted. But in spite of their easy hunt, no cat said much, and the air still felt thick with tension and anticipation. Afterward, the cats rested beside their leader until the warmth had seeped out of the rock on which they lay, and cold black shadows reached up on all sides. Only then did Blue Star call out,
"Come. It is time."
Chapter 15. Blue Star stood and began to pad toward Mothermouth. Tigerclaw walked beside her, matching her stride step for step.
"Come on, Ravenpaw,"
called Greypaw. Ravenpaw was still sitting on the rock, staring up at the rocks. At Greypaw's mew, he stood and began to follow slowly. Firepaw realized his friend had hardly said a word the whole journey.
"Is he just worried about ShadowClan, or is there something else troubling him?"
Firepaw wondered. It took the cats only a few moments to reach Mothermouth. Firepaw stood on the threshold and peered inside. The blackness beyond the stone archway was darker than the cloudiest night. Firepaw narrowed his eyes, trying to see where the tunnel led, but he couldn't see a thing. Beside him, Greypaw and Ravenpaw craned their heads nervously around the entrance. Even Tigerclaw seemed unsettled by the black hole ahead of them.
"How will we find our way in such darkness?"
he asked.
"I will know the way,"
answered Blue Star.
"Just follow my scent. Ravenpaw and Greypaw, you will remain on guard outside. Firepaw, you will accompany me and Tigerclaw to the Moonstone."
Firepaw felt a thrill jolt through him. What an honor! Firepaw glanced sideways at Tigerclaw. The warrior sat with his chin boldly raised, but Firepaw could detect a subtle fear scent coming from him. It grew stronger as Blue Star stepped forward into the blackness. Tigerclaw shook his mighty head and padded after Blue Star. With a brief nod to the other apprentices, Firepaw followed. Inside the cave, his eyes still detected nothing. The complete and utter blackness felt strange, but he was surprised to find that he wasn't frightened. His eagerness to discover what lay ahead was stronger. The cold, damp air reached through his thick fur and into his bones, stiffening his muscles. Even the coldest nights did not hold the same chill as the air here.
"This ground has never known the warmth of the sun,"
thought Firepaw, feeling the rock smooth like ice beneath his paws. Freezing air filled his lungs with each breath, until he felt lightheaded. He followed Blue Star and Tigerclaw through the darkness, judging his way by scent and feel alone. They were walking along a tunnel that sloped down and down, winding first one way and then the other. Firepaw's whiskers brushed the side of the cave, telling him where to walk and where to turn. His nose told him that Blue Star and Tigerclaw were only a tail length ahead of him. On and on they went.
"How far have we come?"
Firepaw wondered.
Then he felt a tingle in his whiskers.
The air in his nostrils seemed fresher than before. He sniffed again, relieved to smell the familiar world above. He could smell peat and prey and the scent of heather. There must be a hole somewhere in the roof of the tunnel.
"Where are we?"
he mewed into the darkness.
"We have entered the cavern of the Moonstone,"
came Blue Star's soft reply.
"Wait here. It will be moon-high soon."
Firepaw folded his hind legs under him on the chilly stone floor and waited. He could hear the steady breathing of Blue Star and the more rapid, fear-scented panting of Tiger Claw. Suddenly, in a flash more blinding than the setting sun, the cave was lit up. Firepaw's eyes were wide open after the blackness of the tunnel. He closed them quickly against the cold, white light. Then, slowly he opened them into tiny slits and peered ahead. He saw a gleaming rock, which glittered as if it were made from countless dewdrops. The Moonstone. Firepaw looked around. In the cold light reflected from the stone, he could make out the shadowy edges of a high-roofed cavern. The Moonstone rose up from the middle of the floor, 3 tail lengths high. Blue Star was staring upward, her fur bleached white in the glow of the Moonstone. Even Tiger Claw's dark pelt shone silver. Firepaw followed Blue Star's gaze. High in the roof was an opening that revealed a narrow triangle of night sky. The moon was casting a beam of light through the hole, down onto the Moonstone, making it sparkle like a star. Beside him, Firepaw smelled Tiger Claw's fierce scent growing, until it became overpowering. Firepaw felt startled. Could the warrior see something else here? Something dangerous? He saw a flash of movement, felt fur rush past him, and heard the fleeing paw steps of Tiger Claw racing back to the entrance. "Firepaw?" Blue Star's voice was quiet and calm. "I'm still here," he answered nervously. What had frightened Tiger Claw? "Blue Star?" Firepaw mewed again when she didn't answer. His heart was beating fast, making the blood roar in his ears. "It is all right, young warrior. Don't be afraid," Blue Star murmured. Her calm voice settled him a little. "I think Tiger Claw was surprised by the power of the Moonstone. In the world above, Tiger Claw is a fearless and mighty warrior. But down here, where the spirits of StarClan speak, a cat needs a different kind of strength. What do you feel, Firepaw?" Firepaw sniffed the air deeply and forced his body to relax. "Only my own curiosity," he admitted. "That is good," Blue Star replied. Firepaw looked back at the Moonstone. His eyes had gotten used to its light, and he was no longer dazzled. Instead, it soothed him. With a twitch of his tail, he remembered his dream. This was the brilliant ball of light he had seen. Spellbound, Firepaw watched as Blue Star padded up to the stone and lay down beside it. She reached her head forward and touched the Moonstone with her nose. Her blue eyes sparkled with its reflection for a moment before she closed them. Now she rested her head on her paws, her eyelids flickering, her paws twitching occasionally. Was she sleeping? Then Firepaw remembered Graypaw's words. "New leaders have to sleep near the stone, and as they sleep, they have special dreams." He waited. The chill was not so intense here, but still he found himself shivering. He had no idea how much time had passed, but suddenly the rock stopped glowing. The cavern was plunged into darkness once more. Firepaw looked up to the opening in the roof of the cavern. The moon had passed on, out of sight. All that remained were tiny stars, shimmering in blackness. Firepaw could just make out the pale shape of his leader, lying beside the Moonstone. He wanted to call out her name, but did not dare break the silence. After more endless moments, she spoke to him. "Firepaw, are you still there?" Her voice sounded remote and agitated. "Yes, Blue Star." Firepaw heard Blue Star's paw steps approaching. "Hurry," she hissed. He felt her fur brush past him. "We must return to camp." Firepaw raced after her, astonished by the speed with which she rushed through the blackness. He followed her scent blindly, up and up the stone tunnel, until she led him safely back to the outside world.
Tiger Claw was waiting at the opening beside Grey Paw and Raven Paw as Blue Star and Fire Paw climbed out of the cave. His expression was cold and his fur was slightly ruffled, but he sat motionless and dignified.
Tiger Claw,
Blue Star greeted him, but did not mention the warrior cat's flight from the depths. Tiger Claw relaxed a little.
What did you learn?
we must return to camp immediately.
Blue Star meowed briefly. Firepaw saw a look of desperation in his leader's eyes. Now the horror of his dream forced its way back into his memory. The fleeing cats, the great dark warriors, the ear-splitting wail of distress. Firepaw tried to ignore the cold fear that gripped his muscles and followed Blue Star as she and the others raced down the dark slope away from Mothermouth. Was his nightmare vision about to come true? Chapter 16. They headed back the way they had come. The moon had disappeared behind a bank of clouds. It was dark, but at least the thunderpath was quieter now. The only monster they heard was far off in the distance. The cats crossed the path together and pushed their way through the hedge on the other side. Firepaw could feel his muscles growing stiff with tiredness as they hurried on. Blue Star kept up a swift pace, with her nose thrust forward and her tail high. Tiger Claw loped beside her. Firepaw followed a few paces behind with Grey Paw, but Raven Paw was flagging.
"Keep up, Raven Paw!"
Tiger Claw growled over his shoulder. Raven Paw flinched and bounded forward until he caught up with Firepaw and Grey Paw. "Are you okay?" Firepaw asked. "Yes," Raven Paw panted, not meeting Firepaw's eyes. "Just a bit tired." They scrambled down a deep ditch and up the other side. "What did Tiger Claw say when he came out of the cave?" Firepaw meowed, trying not to sound too curious. "He wanted to check that we were still guarding the entrance," replied Grey Paw. "Why?" Firepaw hesitated. "Did you sense anything strange about him?" he asked. "Only that damp old cave," Grey Paw mewed, looking surprised. "He seemed a little edgy," ventured Raven Paw. "He wasn't the only one," Grey Paw meowed, looking at the black cat. "What do you mean?" asked Raven Paw. "Just that the fur on your neck stands up whenever you see him these days," whispered Grey Paw. "You nearly jumped out of your skin when he came out of the cave." "You just surprised me, that's all," Raven Paw protested. "You have to admit it was a bit creepy by Mothermouth." "I suppose so," agreed Grey Paw. The cat slipped under a hedge into a cornfield that glowed silver in the moonlight, and followed the ditch that ran around its edge. "So what was it like inside, Firepaw?" Grey Paw demanded. "Did you see the moonstone?" "Yes, I did. It was amazing." Firepaw felt his fur tingle at the memory. Grey Paw shot him an admiring glance. "So it's true. The rock really does shine underground." Firepaw didn't reply. He closed his eyes for a moment, savoring the image of the moonstone that dazzled his mind. Then pictures from his dream crowded into his head, and his eyes shot open. Blue Star was right. They had to get back to camp as quickly as they could. Ahead, Tiger Claw and Blue Star had leaped through a fence out of the cornfield. The apprentices followed, squeezing under the fence onto an earth track. It was the path that led past the two-leg nest and the dogs. Firepaw looked up and saw Blue Star and Tiger Claw trotting tirelessly together, silhouetted against a skyline tinged with red. The sun would be rising soon. "Look!" he called to Grey Paw and Raven Paw. An unfamiliar cat had jumped out in front of the two warriors. "It's a loner," hissed Grey Paw. The three apprentices hurried forward. The stranger was a stout black-and-white tom, shorter than the warriors, but well-muscled. "This is Barley," Blue Star explained to the apprentices as they caught up. "He lives near this two-leg nest." "Hi," meowed the cat. "I haven't seen any of your clan for some moons. How are you, Blue Star?" "I'm well, thank you," replied Blue Star. "And you, Barley? How's the prey been running since we last passed this way?" "Not so bad," replied Barley with an amiable gleam in his eye.
One good thing about two legs, you'll always find plenty of rats nearby. The black and white Tom went on. You seem in more of a hurry than usual. Is everything all right?
Tiger Claw looked at Barley. A growl rumbled deep in his chest. Firepaw could sense that the warrior was suspicious of the loner's curiosity.
I don't like to be away from my clan too long,
Blue Star answered smoothly.
As always, Blue Star, you are tied to your clan like a queen to her kits,
observed Barley,
not unkindly.
What is it you want, Barley?
asked Tiger Claw. Barley flashed him a reproachful look.
I just wanted to warn you that there are 2 dogs here now. You'd be safer going back into the cornfield instead of past the yard.
We know about the dogs. We saw them earlier,
Tiger Claw began impatiently.
We are grateful to you for the warning, interrupted Blue Star. Thank you, Barley. Until next time.
Barley flicked his tail.
Have a safe journey,
he meowed as he bounded away up the track.
Come,
ordered Blue Star. She pushed her way through the long grass between the path and the fence that led back into the cornfield. The 3 apprentices followed, but Tiger Claw hesitated.
You trust the word of a loner?
He meowed. Blue Star stopped and turned to face him.
Would you rather face those dogs?
They were tied up when we passed them earlier,
Tiger Claw pointed out.
They may be untied now. We're going this way,
meowed Blue Star. She ducked under the fence into the field. Firepaw slipped after her, followed by Graypaw, Ravenpaw, and finally Tiger Claw. By now, the sun had lifted its head above the horizon. The hedgerows sparkled with dew, promising another warm day. The cats padded along the edge of the ditch. Firepaw looked down into the deep gully, steep-sided and filled with nettles. Firepaw could smell prey scent. There was something familiar about the bitter odor, but it was one he hadn't smelled for a long time. An ear-splitting squeal made Firepaw whip around. Ravenpaw was struggling and clawing at the earth. Something had hold of his leg and was dragging him down into the ditch.
Rats!
Spat Tiger Claw.
Barley has sent us into a trap.
Before they could react, all 5 cats were surrounded. Huge brown rats swarmed out of the ditch, squeaking shrilly. Firepaw could see their sharp front teeth glinting in the early dawn light. Suddenly one leaped onto Firepaw's shoulder. Fiery pain shot through his shoulder as the rat sank its teeth into his flesh. Another grasped his leg between its powerful jaws. Firepaw flung himself down and writhed madly, trying to shake free. He knew the rats were not as strong as he was, but there were so many of them. Yowls, hisses, and spits told him that the others were also being attacked. Firepaw slashed fiercely with his claws, slicing out at a rat that held on to his leg. It let go, but another one gripped his tail. Fast as lightning, powered by fear and rage, Firepaw fought and hacked at his attackers. Twisting his head around, he sank his teeth into the rat that had embedded itself into his shoulders. He felt the bones of its neck crunch in his mouth and its body go limp before it fell away onto the dirt track. Firepaw gasped with pain as yet another rat leaped onto his back and sank its teeth in. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a flash of white fur. For a moment he was confused. Then he felt the rat being dragged off him. Firepaw spun around to see Barley flinging the rodent into the ditch. Without hesitating, Barley glanced around and sprinted over to Blue Star. She was writhing on the path, covered in rats. In a flash, Barley had the spine of one between his teeth and was plucking it off her with practiced ease. He spat it onto the ground and grabbed another in his mouth as Blue Star thrashed beneath him. Firepaw rushed over to Graypaw, who was being attacked from both sides by 2 smaller rats. Firepaw lunged at the nearest one, giving it a bite that left it dead. Graypaw managed to turn and pin down the other with his claws. He grabbed it with his teeth and flung it into the ditch as hard as he could. It did not come back.
"They're running away!"
Tiger Claw yowled. Sure enough, the remaining rats were fleeing down into the safety of the ditch. Firepaw could hear the scrabbling of small paws disappearing into the nettles. The bites in his shoulder and hind legs stung sharply. He licked carefully at his fur, wet and matted with blood, its sharp tang mingling with the stench of the rats. Firepaw looked around for Ravenpaw. Greypaw was standing at the edge of the nettles, mewing encouragement as Ravenpaw pulled himself out of the ditch, muddy and stung. A young rat was still hanging on to his tail. Firepaw bounded over and finished it off quickly, while Greypaw helped to pull Ravenpaw over the top of the ditch. Now Firepaw looked for Bluestar. He saw Barley first, standing at the top of the ditch, scanning the depths for more rats. Bluestar was lying on the path nearby. Alarmed, Firepaw dashed to his leader's side. The thick gray fur on the back of her neck was drenched with blood. "Bluestar?" he mewed. Bluestar did not reply.
Oh my god, no.
A furious yowl made Firepaw look up. Tigerclaw leaped on top of Barley and pinned him to the ground. "You sent us into a trap!" he snarled. "I didn't know the rats were here," spat Barley, his paws scrabbling in the dust as he struggled to stand up. "Why did you send us this way?" hissed Tigerclaw. "The dogs!" "The dogs were tied when we passed them earlier." "The two-leg unties them at night. They guard his nest," Barley panted, wheezing under the weight of Tigerclaw's massive paws. "Tigerclaw! Bluestar is injured!" Firepaw burst out. Tigerclaw released Barley at once. Barley got up and shook the dust from his coat. The great warrior bounded over to Bluestar's side and sniffed her wounds. "Is there anything we can do?" Firepaw asked. "She is in the hands of StarClan now," meowed Tigerclaw solemnly, stepping back. Firepaw opened his eyes wide with shock.
Oh yeah, she has...
Did Tigerclaw mean that Bluestar was dead? His fur prickled as he looked down at his leader. Is this what the spirits at the Moonstone had warned her about? Greypaw and Ravenpaw had joined them and stood beside their leader, horror-struck. Barley hung back, craning his neck to see what was happening. Bluestar's eyes were open but glazed, and her gray body lay motionless. She didn't even appear to be breathing. "Is she dead?" whispered Ravenpaw. "I don't know. We must wait and see," replied Tigerclaw. The 5 cats waited in silence as the sun began to climb into the sky. Firepaw found himself wordlessly begging StarClan to protect his leader, to send her back to them. Then Bluestar stirred. The end of her tail twitched, and she lifted her head. "Bluestar?" mewed Firepaw, his voice trembling. "It's all right," Bluestar rasped. "I am still here. I have lost a life, but it wasn't my 9th. Joy flooded Firepaw. He looked at Tigerclaw, expecting to see relief on his face, but the dark warrior was expressionless. "Right," Tigerclaw meowed in a commanding tone. "Ravenpaw, fetch cobwebs for Bluestar's wounds. Greypaw, find Marigold or Horsetail." The 2 apprentices dashed away. "Barley, I think you should leave us now." Firepaw looked over to the loner who had fought so bravely to help them.
Poor Bluestar.
He wanted to thank him, but under Tigerclaw's fierce gaze, he didn't dare. Instead of speaking, Firepaw gave Barley a tiny nod. Barley seemed to understand, for he nodded in return and left without another word. Bluestar was still lying on the dirt track. "Is everyone all right?" she asked hoarsely. Tigerclaw nodded. Ravenpaw came charging back, his left forepaw wrapped in a thick wad of cobwebs. "Here," he mewed. "Should I put them on her wounds?" Firepaw asked Tigerclaw. "Yellowfang showed me how." "Very well," agreed Tigerclaw. He walked away and scanned the ditch again, his ears pricked for more rats. Firepaw peeled a clump of cobwebs from Ravenpaw's paw and began to press them firmly onto Bluestar's wounds. She winced under his touch. "If it had not been for Tigerclaw, those rats would have eaten me alive," she murmured, her voice tight with pain.
It wasn't Tiger Claw who saved you. It was Barley, Firepaw whispered as he took some more cobwebs from Ravenpaw. Barley? Bluestar sounded surprised. Is he here? Tiger Claw sent him away, Firepaw answered
Tiger
quietly.
Claw is so stupid.
He thinks Barley sent us into a trap.
And what do you think?
Bluestar rasped. Firepaw didn't look up, but concentrated on pressing the last bit of cobweb into place. Barley is a loner. What would he gain by sending us into a trap only to rescue us from it? He mewed eventually. Bluestar laid down her head and closed her eyes again. Greypaw returned with some horsetail. Firepaw chewed the leaves and spat the juice onto Bluestar's wounds. He knew it would help stop infection, but he still wished Spotted Leaf were with him, with her knowledge of and confidence in healing.
We should rest here while Bluestar recovers,
announced Tiger Claw, padding up.
No,
Bluestar insisted.
we must return to the camp.
Narrowing her eyes in pain, she struggled to her paws.
Let's keep going.
The ThunderClan leader limped along the edge of the field. Tiger Claw walked at her side, his face dark with unknowable thoughts. The apprentices exchanged anxious glances, and then followed.
It is a long time since I saw you lose a life, Bluestar.
Firepaw overheard Tiger Claw's whispered words.
How many have you lost now?
Firepaw couldn't help feeling surprised at Tiger Claw's open curiosity. That was my 5th, replied Bluestar quietly. Firepaw strained his ears, but Tiger Claw did not reply. He padded on, lost in thought. Chapter 17. Sun-High came and went as the cats made their way through WindClan's old hunting grounds. Their heavy silence showed that they were still sore after the rat fight. Firepaw felt scratched and bitten all over. He could see Greypaw was limping, occasionally hopping on 3 legs to protect his injured back leg. But it was Bluestar who worried him most. Her pace was even slower now, but she refused to stop and rest. The grim look on her face, clouded by pain, told Firepaw how much she wanted to reach the ThunderClan camp.
Don't worry about ShadowClan warriors,
she meowed through gritted teeth as Tiger Claw paused to sniff the air.
You won't find any here today.
How could she be so sure? Firepaw wondered. They picked their way carefully down the steep, rocky hillside that led to 4 trees and joined the familiar trail that led home. It was late afternoon, and Firepaw began to think longingly of his nest and a plump helping of fresh kill. I can still smell the stench of ShadowClan, Greypaw muttered to Firepaw as they trekked through ThunderClan's hunting grounds. Perhaps the breezes carried it down from WindClan's territory, Firepaw suggested. He could smell it too, and his whiskers were trembling. Suddenly, Ravenpaw stopped. Can you hear that? He mewed in a hushed voice. Firepaw strained his ears. At first he heard only the familiar sounds of the forest, leaves rustling, a pigeon calling. Then his blood ran cold. In the distance he could hear battle-hungry yowls and the shrill squeal of terrified kits.
ShadowClan is here.
Quick! Bluestar howled.
It is as StarClan warned me. Our camp is being attacked.
She tried to leap forward, but stumbled. She pushed herself up and limped onward. Tiger Claw and Firepaw pelted forward side by side. Greypaw and Ravenpaw followed, their tail fur bristled to twice its usual size. Firepaw forgot his soreness as he charged toward the camp. His only concern was to protect the clan. The sounds of battle grew louder and louder as he neared the camp entrance, and the stench of ShadowClan filled his nostrils. He was right behind Tiger Claw as the cats dashed through the tunnel and into the clearing. They were met by a frenzy of fighting. ThunderClan cats battling furiously with ShadowClan warriors. The kits were out of sight, and Firepaw hoped they were safely hidden in the nursery. He guessed the weakest elders would be sheltering inside the hollow trunk of their fallen tree. Every corner of the camp seemed alive with warriors. Firepaw could see Frostfur and Goldenflower clawing and biting at a huge gray tom. Even the young tabby queen Brindleface was fighting, though she was very close to kidding. Darkstripe was locked in a fierce tussle with a black warrior. 3 of the elders, Small Ear, Patchpelt, and One Eye, were nipping bravely at a tortoiseshell who fought with twice their speed and ferocity. The returning cats hurled themselves into the battle. Firepaw caught hold of a tabby warrior queen, much larger than him, and sank his teeth deep into her leg. She yowled with pain and turned on him, lashing out with sharp claws and lunging at his neck with her teeth bared. He twisted and ducked to avoid her bite. She couldn't match his speed, and he managed to grasp her from behind and pull her down into the dirt. With his strong hind legs, he clawed at her back, till she squealed and struggled away from him, running headlong into the thick undergrowth that surrounded the camp. Firepaw glanced around to see that Blue Star had arrived. Despite her injury, she was fighting another tabby. Firepaw had never seen her fight before, but even wounded, she was a powerful opponent. Her victim struggled to escape, but she held him tightly and clawed him so fiercely that Firepaw knew he would bear the scars of this fight for many moons. Then he saw a white ShadowClan cat with jet-black paws, dragging a ThunderClan elder away from the nursery. Firepaw remembered those unusual dark paws from the gathering. Blackfoot! The ShadowClan deputy made quick work of killing the elder, who had been guarding the kits, and began to reach into the bramble nest with one massive paw. The kits were squealing and mewling, undefended now as their mothers wrestled with other ShadowClan warriors in the clearing. Firepaw prepared to spring toward the nursery, but a claw sliced painfully down his side, and he whipped around to see a scrawny tortoiseshell leap on top of him. As he slammed into the ground, he tried to call out to the other ThunderClan cats that the kits were in danger. Fighting with all his strength to escape the tortoiseshell's grip, he wrenched his head around so he could see the bramble nest. Blackfoot had scooped 2 kits from their bedding already and was reaching in for a third. Firepaw saw no more as the tortoiseshell raked his belly with her hind claws. Firepaw scrabbled onto his feet and crouched low as if in defeat. The trick had worked before, and it worked now. As the tortoiseshell gripped him triumphantly and began to sink her teeth into Firepaw's neck, Firepaw sprang upward as hard as he could and flung the warrior away. He spun around and was on the winded warrior in an instant. This time he showed no mercy, plunging his teeth deep into the cat's shoulder.
Like this.
The bite sent the she-cat howling into the undergrowth. Firepaw jumped up, dashed over to the nursery, and thrust his head through the nursery entrance. Blackfoot was nowhere to be seen. Inside the nest, crouching over the terrified kits, was Yellowfang. Her gray fur was spattered with blood, and one of her eyes was painfully swollen. She looked up at Firepaw with a ferocious hiss. Then, realizing it was him, she yowled, "They're okay! I'll protect them!" Firepaw looked at her as she calmed the helpless kits, and Broken Star's dire warning about the ShadowClan rogue flashed through his mind. He didn't have time to think about that now. He would have to trust Yellowfang. He nodded quickly and ducked back out of the brambles. There were now only a few ShadowClan cats left in the camp. Ravenpaw and Greypaw were fighting side by side, lashing out at a black Tom until he fled howling into the bushes. White Storm and Darkstripe chased the last 2 intruders out of the camp, sending them off with a few extra scratches and bites. Firepaw sat down, exhausted, and stared around the camp. It was devastated. Blood spattered the clearing, and tufts of fur drifted in the dust. The surrounding wall of undergrowth was ripped open where the invaders had crashed through. One by one, the ThunderClan cats gathered beneath the high rock. Greypaw came to sit by him, his sides heaving and blood trickling from a torn ear. Ravenpaw flopped down and began to lick a wound on his tail. The queens ran to the nursery to check on their kits. Firepaw found himself waiting tensely for their return, his view blocked by the other cats. He relaxed when he heard squeals and purrs of joy coming from the bramble nest. Frostfur wove her way back through the crowd, followed by Yellowfang. The White Queen stepped forward and addressed them. "Our kits are all safe,
thanks to Yellowfang. A Shadow Clan warrior killed brave Rosetail and was trying to steal them from their nest, but Yellowfang fought him off.
It was no ordinary Shadow Clan warrior either, Firepaw put in.
He was determined to let the clan know how much they owed Yellowfang.
I saw him. It was Blackfoot. The Shadow Clan deputy,
meowed Brindleface, who had fought so bitterly to protect the unborn kits in her swollen belly. There was a stir at the edge of the group as Blue Star limped forward and made her way over to the apprentices. The grave expression on her face was enough to tell Firepaw that something was wrong.
Spotted Leaf is with Lionheart,
she murmured.
He was injured in the battle. It looks bad.
No.
She turned her head toward the shadow on the far side of the high rock where the warrior lay, a motionless bundle of dusty golden fur. A high-pitched wail rose from Greypaw's throat, and he raced over to Lionheart. Spotted Leaf, who had been leaning over the ThunderClan deputy, stepped back to let the young apprentice share tongues for the last time with his mentor. As Greypaw's howl of grief echoed around the clearing, Firepaw's fur tingled, and his blood ran cold. It was the cry he had heard in his dream.
No.
For a moment his head swam. Then he gave himself a shake. He had to keep calm, for Greypaw's sake. Firepaw looked at Blue Star, who nodded, and he padded over to join his friend by the high rock. He stopped for a moment beside Spotted Leaf. She looked exhausted and dull-eyed with grief.
I can't help Lionheart now,
she mewed quietly to him.
He is on his way to join StarClan.
No, I don't.
She pressed her body against Firepaw's side, and he felt comforted by the touch of her warm fur. The other cats looked on in silence as the sun slowly set behind the trees. Finally, Greypaw sat up and cried out,
"He's gone!"
He lay down again beside Lionheart's body and rested his head on his front paws. The rest of the clan walked silently forward to carry out their own grieving rituals for their beloved deputy. Firepaw joined them. He licked Lionheart's neck and murmured, "Thank you for your wisdom. You taught me so much." Then he sat down beside Greypaw and began gently to groom his friend's ears. Blue Star waited until the other cats had left before padding quietly up. Greypaw didn't even seem to notice his leader's presence. Firepaw looked away as Blue Star spoke her last words to her old friend.
"Oh, what am I going to do without you, Lionheart?"
she whispered. Then she limped back to her den and crouched down outside, staring, grief-stricken, into the distance. She didn't even try to lick clean her bloody, matted fur. It was the first time Firepaw had seen her look utterly defeated, and he felt a chill run through him. He sat with Greypaw and Lionheart until the moon rose high. Ravenpaw joined him, and together they kept company with their grieving friend. Tigerclaw strode over and briefly shared tongues with Lionheart. Firepaw waited to hear what words he would share with his warrior friend, but Tigerclaw remained silent as he licked the matted fur. To Firepaw's confusion, the dark tabby's eyes seemed to be fixed on Ravenpaw rather than the fallen deputy. Spotted Leaf padded lightly around the camp, tending to wounds and battered nerves. Firepaw watched her approach Blue Star twice, but each time the leader sent her away to see to the others. Only when Spotted Leaf had attended to the wounds of all the other cats did Blue Star allow her to treat her bites and scratches. When she had finished, Spotted Leaf turned and walked back to her den. Blue Star stood and slowly hauled herself up onto the high rock. The clan cats seemed to have been waiting for her. As soon as she had settled herself in her usual spot, they began to gather in the clearing below, unusually silent and somber-faced. Firepaw and Ravenpaw got stiffly to their paws and joined them, leaving Greypaw behind with Lionheart's body. The gray apprentice was still lying with his nose resting against Lionheart's cooling golden pelt. Firepaw guessed Bluestar would excuse Greypaw from the clan meeting this time.
It is nearly moon high,
meowed Bluestar as Firepaw slipped into place next to Ravenpaw.
and it is once more my duty, much, much too soon, to name ThunderClan's new deputy.
Her voice was tired and cracked with sadness. Firepaw looked from warrior to warrior. They were all looking expectantly at Tigerclaw. Even Whitestorm had turned to watch the dark tabby. From the bold expression on his face and the way his whiskers twitched in anticipation, Tigerclaw seemed to agree with them. Bluestar took a deep breath and continued.
I say these words before the body of Lionheart, so that his spirit may hear and approve my choice.
She hesitated.
I have not forgotten how one cat avenged the death of Redtail and brought his body back to us. ThunderClan needs this fearless loyalty even more now.
Bluestar paused again, and then meowed the name loud and clear.
Tigerclaw will be the new deputy of ThunderClan.
There was a yowl of approval, with the loudest voices belonging to Darkstripe and Longtail. Whitestorm sat calmly, his eyes closed, his tail wrapped neatly around him. He was nodding slowly and approvingly. Tigerclaw lifted his chin proudly, his eyes half closed as he listened to the clan. Then he stalked through the crowd, accepting tributes with the smallest of nods, and leaped up onto the high rock beside Bluestar.
ThunderClan,
he yelled.
I am honored to accept the position of clan deputy. I never expected to gain such high rank, but by the spirit of Lionheart, I vow to serve you as best I can.
He gravely dipped his head, fixing the crowd with his wide yellow eyes, and jumped down from the high rock. Firepaw heard Ravenpaw murmur, "Oh no," under his breath beside him. He turned to look curiously at his friend. Ravenpaw's head was hanging low. "She should never have chosen him," he muttered. "Are you talking about Tigerclaw?" Firepaw whispered. "He's wanted to be deputy ever since he took care of Redtail," Ravenpaw mewed. He stopped abruptly. "Took care of Redtail?" Firepaw echoed. His mind suddenly raced with questions. What did Ravenpaw know? At the gathering, had his account of the battle with RiverClan been true? Was Tigerclaw responsible for Redtail's death?
Probably, yeah.
Chapter 18.
Are you telling Firepaw how I protected Redtail?
Firepaw felt a cold shiver ruffle the fur on the back of his neck. Ravenpaw whipped around, eyes wide with fear. Tigerclaw loomed over them, his lips drawn back in a menacing snarl. Firepaw jumped up and faced the new deputy.
He was just saying he wished you had been here to take care of Lionheart as well. That's all,
he mewed, thinking quickly. Tigerclaw looked from one to the other, then stalked away in silence. Ravenpaw's green eyes clouded with terror, and he started to tremble uncontrollably. "Ravenpaw?" Firepaw meowed in alarm. But Ravenpaw didn't even look up at him. With his head held low, he slunk back to Greypaw and crouched next to him, pressing his skinny black body next to Greypaw's thick fur, as if he was suddenly cold. Firepaw looked helplessly at his two friends as they huddled beside Lionheart's body. Not knowing what else to do, he padded over and settled himself beside them, ready to sit out the night. As the moon passed overhead, other cats came to join their vigil. Bluestar arrived last, once the camp was calm and quiet. She said nothing, but sat a little way off, gazing at her dead deputy with an expression of such unbearable grief that Firepaw had to look away. At dawn, a group of elders came to take Lionheart's body away to the burial place. Greypaw followed to help dig the hole where the great warrior would rest. Firepaw yawned and stretched. He felt chilled to the bone. Leaffall was nearly here now, and the woods were clouded with mist, but above the leaves Firepaw saw a rosy morning sky. He watched Greypaw disappear into the dew-soaked undergrowth with the elders. Ravenpaw jumped to his paws and hurried back to the apprentice's den. Firepaw followed him slowly. By the time he arrived, the black cat was curled up with his nose tucked under his tail as if asleep. Firepaw was too exhausted to speak. He circled around on his mossy bed and then settled down for a long sleep. "Wake up!" Firepaw heard Dustpaw's voice calling through the den entrance. He opened his eyes. Ravenpaw was already awake, sitting bolt upright with his ears pricked. Greypaw was stirring beside him. Firepaw was surprised to see the familiar gray shape. He hadn't heard him come back after burying Lionheart. "Bluestar's called another meeting," Dustpaw hissed at them and ducked out of the ferns. The three apprentices crawled out of the warm den. The sun was already past its height, and the air felt cooler than before. Firepaw shivered and his belly growled. He couldn't remember the last time he had eaten, and he wondered briefly if he would have a chance to hunt today. Firepaw, Greypaw, and Ravenpaw hurried to join the crowd gathered below the high rock. Tigerclaw was speaking from his position beside Bluestar.
During the battle, our leader lost another life. Now that she has only 4 of her 9 lives left, I am going to appoint a bodyguard to stay at her side constantly. No cat will be allowed to approach her unless the guards are present.
His amber eyes flicked to Ravenpaw and then back to the rest of the crowd.
Darkstripe and Longtail,
he continued, turning his gaze on the warriors.
You will act as Bluestar's guards.
Darkstripe and Longtail nodded importantly and sat taller. Bluestar now spoke. Her voice sounded gentle and calming after her deputy's commanding yowl. "Thank you, Tigerclaw, for your loyalty. But the clan must understand that I am still here for them. No cat should hesitate to approach me, and I am happy to speak to anyone with or without my bodyguards." Her eyes darted briefly in Tigerclaw's direction. "As the warrior code says, the safety of the clan is more important than the security of any single member." She paused, and her sky-blue gaze rested briefly on Firepaw. "And now, I wish to invite Yellowfang to join ThunderClan." Meows of surprise rose from some of the warriors. Bluestar looked at Frostfur, who nodded her agreement. The other queens looked on silently. Bluestar continued. "Her actions last night proved that she is brave and loyal. If she wishes it, we would welcome her as a full member of this clan." From her place at the edge of the crowd, Yellowfang looked up at the clan leader and murmured, "I am honored, Bluestar, and I accept your offer." "Good," meowed Bluestar, her voice firm, as if the matter was now closed. Firepaw purred with delight and nudged Greypaw. He was surprised to realize just how much Bluestar's public show of trust in Yellowfang meant to him. Bluestar began to speak again. "Last night we successfully defended ourselves against ShadowClan, but they are still a great threat. The repair work we began this morning will continue. Our boundaries will be patrolled constantly. We must not assume that the war is over." Tigerclaw stood up, his tail held high, and glared down at the assembled cats.
ShadowClan attacked while we were away from camp, he growled. They chose their moment well. How did they know that the camp was so poorly defended? Do they have eyes inside our camp?
Firepaw froze in horror as Tigerclaw fixed his cold stare on Ravenpaw. Some of the cats followed their deputy's gaze and stared in puzzlement at the black apprentice. Ravenpaw looked at the ground and shifted his paws nervously. Tigerclaw went on.
We still have a while before sunset. We must concentrate on rebuilding our camp. Meanwhile, if you suspect anything or anyone, tell me. Be assured, anything you say will be in confidence."
He nodded to dismiss the clan, then turned and began murmuring to Blue Star. The cats separated and began to move around the camp, assessing damage and forming work groups.
"Ravenpaw!"
Firepaw called, still shocked by Tigerclaw's dark hint that his own apprentice had betrayed the clan. But Ravenpaw had already bounded away. Firepaw could see him offering to help Halftail and Whitestorm before rushing off to collect twigs so they could patch the holes in the boundary wall. Ravenpaw clearly didn't want to talk.
"Let's go and help him,"
suggested Greypaw. His voice was flat and exhausted, and his eyes were dull.
"You go. I'll be there in a moment,"
Firepaw answered.
"First I want to check on Yellowfang, see if she's okay after her fight with Blackfoot."
He looked for Yellowfang in her nest by the fallen tree. She was stretched out in the shadows, her eyes thoughtful.
"Firepaw,"
she purred when she saw him.
"I'm glad you have come. I wanted to check that you were all right,"
Firepaw mewed.
"Old habits stay longer than old scents, eh?"
Meowed Yellowfang with a flash of her old spirit.
"I suppose so,"
Firepaw confessed.
"How are you feeling?" "This old leg injury is playing up again, but I'll be fine,"
Yellowfang told him.
"How did you manage to fight Blackfoot off?"
Firepaw asked, unable to keep the admiration out of his voice.
"Blackfoot's strong, but he's not a clever fighter. Fighting you was more of a challenge."
Firepaw looked for the flicker of humor in the old cat's eyes, but there was none. She continued.
"I've known him since he was a kid. He hasn't changed. A bully, but no brains."
Firepaw sat down beside her.
"I'm not surprised Blue Star asked you to join the clan,"
he purred.
"You certainly showed your loyalty last night."
Yellowfang twitched her tail.
"Perhaps a truly loyal cat would have fought at the side of the clan that raised her." "But then I'd be fighting for my 2 legs,"
Firepaw pointed out. Yellowfang shot him an admiring glance.
"Well said, youngster. But then, you have always been a thinker."
Sorrow pierced Firepaw's heart as he remembered these were Lionheart's words, too.
"Do you miss ShadowClan?"
he asked Yellowfang. Yellowfang blinked slowly.
"I miss the old ShadowClan,"
she meowed at last.
"The way it used to be." "Until Broken Star became leader?"
Firepaw was curious.
"Yes,"
Yellowfang admitted softly.
"He changed the clan."
She gave a wheezy laugh.
"He always knew how to give a good speech. He could make you believe a mouse was a rabbit if he set his mind to it. Perhaps that is why I was so blind to his faults."
The old she-cat stared into the distance, lost in memories.
"Bet you can't guess who the new ShadowClan medicine cat is,"
Firepaw mewed, suddenly remembering what he had learned at the gathering. It felt like moons ago now. His words seemed to shake Yellowfang back into the present.
"Not Running Nose,"
she meowed.
"Yep."
Yellowfang shook her head.
"But he can't even cure his own cold." "That's what Greypaw said."
They purred together for a moment, amused. Firepaw got to his paws.
"I'll leave you to rest now. Call me if you need anything else today."
Yellowfang lifted her head.
"Before you go, Firepaw, I hear you were in a rat fight. Did they draw blood?" "It's okay. Spotted Leaf has treated my wounds with Marigold." "Sometimes Marigold is not strong enough for rat bites. Go and find a patch of wild garlic to roll in. I think there's some not far from the camp entrance. That will draw out any poisons the rats may have left. Although," she added dryly, "your den mates might not thank me for my advice."
Well, I do. Thanks, Yellowfang.
Firepaw purred. Go carefully, young one. Yellowfang held his gaze for a moment, then let her chin rest on her front paws and closed her eyes. Firepaw slipped under the branches around Yellowfang's nest and headed for the gorse tunnel in search of the wild garlic. The sun was setting now, and he could hear the queens settling their kits for the night. "Where do you think you're going?" growled a voice from the shadows. It was Darkstripe.
Yellowfang told me to go out and...
"You don't take orders from that rogue," hissed the warrior. "Go and help with the repairs. No cat is to leave the camp tonight." He lashed his tail from side to side.
Yes, Darkstripe.
Firepaw mewed, dipping his head submissively. He turned and muttered, "Dirtstripe," under his breath, then headed.
Okay, I'm gonna stop now. Almost 2 hours. And we have like, yeah, 2 hours left before we end the first chapter, first book. We're doing so far good. Well, I feel so bad about Lionheart. Like, not deputy is Tiger Claw. I don't like him. And that was unfortunate for Blue Star as well. She lost alive. At least she's still alive. And I don't know what's happening, but haven't. I mean, I feel like I've seen something. And probably Tiger Claw is like very suspicious. I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna end the live stream now. So yeah, and for the 500 live stream, I'll probably do it. I don't know if I'm gonna have the time to do it. I'll tell you if I have the time, but yeah, for now, I'm gonna eat something and see what I can do. And if I can't today, maybe I'll do it tomorrow or another day. But yeah.